You know, every single workplace, whether it's a huge factory or just a small office, has one thing in common: a fundamental need to keep its people safe and healthy. And we're not just talking about following rules. It's about building a place where everyone can do their best work without risking their well-being. So, how do you actually do that? How do organizations create that kind of protective, resilient culture? Well, let's dive in.
To really get why the solution is so important, we've got to start with the problem itself. Why is having a structured plan for health and safety so absolutely critical in the first place?
I love this image because it nails the reality of workplace risk perfectly. See, it's usually not one big, dramatic event out of nowhere. It's almost always a chain reaction. Some small, overlooked hazard, that's your first domino, gets tipped over, and that can set off a whole sequence of events that leads to something much, much more serious. The whole point of a safety system is to spot that first domino and get it out of the way before it even has a chance to fall.
Now let's look at the actual definition from the standard, because it's probably broader than you think. When we talk about preventing harm, it's not just about, avoiding a sprained ankle. The standard is very clear. It covers any bad effect on a person's physical, mental, or cognitive condition. And that is a huge deal. It means a truly healthy workplace protects the whole person, from their physical safety right through to their mental well-being.
So, when you're facing this challenge, this domino effect of risks, and this really broad responsibility for everyone's well-being, it kind of makes you wonder, right? What if we didn't all have to reinvent the wheel? What if there was some kind of global blueprint we could all follow?
Well, there is, and that blueprint is called ISO 45001. So let's pull back the curtain and see what this international standard is all about and what it's trying to do.
Okay, so at its heart, ISO 45001 gives you the requirements for what's called an Occupational Health and Safety, or OH&S, management system. The word to really hang on to there is framework. This is not just a big book of rules or a simple checklist. It's a structured, systematic way for any organization to get a handle on its health and safety risks and, just as important, to find opportunities to get better.
And the really cool thing is, this framework is totally universal. It really doesn't matter if you're a giant multinational corporation or a tiny family-owned shop. As the standard itself says in the intro, it's for any organization that wants to manage its risks in a more structured way. It's built to scale. So what's the end game here? If an organization actually puts this framework into place, what's it supposed to accomplish? Well, the standard lays it out pretty clearly. It's all about creating this loop of constant improvement, making sure you're meeting all your legal duties, and at the end of the day, achieving that core mission, providing a safe and healthy workplace that stops people from getting hurt.
Okay, so how does this framework actually work in the real world? Well, it's powered by a simple but incredibly powerful process, one you might have heard of. It's called the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. The PDCA cycle is really the engine that makes the whole thing run. Just think of it as this logical, four-step loop that never stops. It makes sure the safety system is always alive, always evolving, and always getting better. Let's quickly walk through each of these steps.
All right, first, you plan. This is the strategy phase. The organization takes a hard look at everything it does to find potential hazards, like a slippery floor or exposure to chemicals. Based on that, it sets clear goals. Maybe something like, let's reduce minor accidents by 10%, and then figures out the processes to make that happen. Next up, you do. Pretty straightforward, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. You take all those processes you designed back in the planning stage and you actually put them into action. That might mean new safety training, installing better guards on machines, you name it.
Then comes the check stage, and this part is so important. This is where you have to step back and honestly ask, is any of this actually working? It means collecting data, from safety audits, incident reports, worker feedback, to see if your processes are actually making a difference and if you're hitting those goals you set. And finally, you act. Based on everything you learned in the check stage, you take action. Maybe you need to fix a process that isn't working, or maybe you double down on something that's been a huge success. And here's the magic part. This act stage feeds right back into a new plan stage, and the whole cycle starts over again, better and smarter than before. Now, a framework like this, a cycle, it's only as good as the people who bring it to life. So let's talk about the two human elements the standard says are absolutely critical for success: leadership commitment and the voice of the workers.
The standard doesn't mess around on this point. This quote says it all. Safety is not something that just gets handed off to a manager. Top management, the very top, has to take overall responsibility and accountability. The success or failure of the whole system, it rests right at the top.
But leadership is only one side of the coin. The system's success is just as dependent on getting workers at every single level actively involved. I mean, they're the ones on the front lines. They often have the clearest view of the real risks and the best ideas for how to fix them. And here, the standard makes a really smart distinction. It doesn't just say, hey, talk to your employees. It defines two different levels of engagement. Consultation is asking for their opinions before you make a decision. But participation, that's a step further. It means bringing them into the decision-making process. For this to really work, you need both.
So, we have the framework, the cycle that powers it, and the crucial human elements of leadership and participation. What is this all building toward? What's the ultimate destination?
And this is the real takeaway. The objective is not to reach some perfect static state of safety and then you're done. The real goal is continual improvement. The standard calls it a recurring activity to enhance performance. In other words, you're always looking for ways to get better, safer, and healthier. It's a journey, not a destination.
And this just sums up the whole philosophy perfectly. This tagline comes right from the British Standards publication, and it says everything. The goal of ISO 45001 is to weave health and safety so deep into the fabric of an organization that doing things the right way, the safe way, it just becomes a habit. Excellence becomes second nature. And that really leaves us with one final thought. Continual improvement doesn't have to be about some massive, earth-shattering change. It usually starts with small steps. So as you think about your own environment, what's one small improvement? What's one first domino you could address to start that amazing cycle of getting better?